everybody. It's great to be here. Again, my name is Seema Shah, and I'm Director of Research for Special Projects at the Foundation Center in our New York office. And as many of you may know, we've been working with the Open Society Foundations for the past couple of years to bring greater visibility to within philanthropy about support for Black men and boys. So as Cindy said, I'm here today to talk about two pieces of work. I'm going to share the highlights of our research report, Where Do We Go From Here, that came out in October. The report examines the philanthropic landscape nationally to see which foundations were active in this field, what kinds of activities foundations have been supporting, and generally what the giving trends have been. The second half of the presentation will focus on our recently launched web portal on Black male achievement called bmafunders.org, which, as Cindy said, provides a whole suite of resources, tools, and data for funders and nonprofits working on this issue. So at the end of the presentation, I'll walk everybody through a quick demo of the site. So let me start with the report. The Foundation Center has been documenting the activities of U.S. foundations for more than 50 years. Each year, our staff codes more than 150,000 grants, which makes up our grant sample, which we use for research purposes. We code grants that are $10,000 and higher for more than 1,000 larger foundations, and this set typically accounts for half of all foundation giving by U.S. foundations. These grants are coded on many different dimensions, including subject area, type of support, and the population group served. So before I get into the findings, I'm going to say a bit more about the methodology and give you an idea of how our team at the Foundation Center determines if a grant supports a particular group of people, in this case, Black men and boys. So the first thing we do is we look at the recipient organization of the grant to see if the organization's mission specifies that African American males are a focus of their work. So that's represented by the green box that you see on the far left. For example, any grant going to Morehouse College would automatically get coded as a grant explicitly designated for Black males because of its mission. The second way we can determine if a grant supports Black men and boys is through the grant description. We look at the description of the grant to see if African American men or boys are the intended beneficiary of the grant. So that's the second green box that you see. After that, it gets a little trickier. There are a lot of grants where we don't have detailed information about the intended beneficiaries. For example, there are grants that support men of color, and we don't know the extent to which they support African American men, Latino men, or some other groups. We refer to those grants for the purposes of our research as implicit funding, and that's the yellow box that you see. And we looked at these grants with the understanding that there's a strong possibility that much of this work does in fact benefit Black men and boys. We just don't know exactly how much. So the catch is that about 50% of the grant descriptions we see don't specify any population group at all. And in many cases, that makes sense because the grant may be benefiting the environment or the general public in some way. But that's the red box that you see on the right. So all of that is to say that our methodology is good at capturing grants that are explicitly designated to serve Black men and boys, but I want to be clear and I want to acknowledge that our research, that our data doesn't necessarily capture all giving benefiting Black men and boys. So that said, these are by far the best available data out there, and it's certainly important to use that as a starting point for dialogue and for understanding what the funding patterns look like. So with that background, I'll go ahead and transition to the research findings. Here's what the picture looks like for African American males. The gold bars that you see on this slide indicate funding that was explicitly designated to benefit Black men and boys. In 2003, that was $10 million. By 2010, that had grown to $28.6 million. And so over that 8-year period, we see about $141 million given by foundations that was intended to benefit Black men and boys. If you add in grants in support of boys and men of color, those are the light gray boxes in the middle, as well as grants for economically disadvantaged males, which are the dark gray boxes at the end of the chart. That figure could be as high as $435 million, but again, with the gray bars, we can't be sure exactly how much of this is going specifically for African American males. Overall, the trend is positive, but in the context of a philanthropic sector that awards more than $45 billion in grants every year, there's certainly room for growth and for more to be done. In terms of number of grants in recent years, again, the trend has been positive. In recent years, we've seen about 200 grants a year awarded for Black men and boys, and that's up from around 75 grants back in 2003. In terms of subject area, the largest proportion of grant dollars are going for education, about 40%. And the vast majority of these grant dollars are for programmatic support, with a smaller proportion, about 11%, going for general operating support. Geographically, we found the largest share of grant dollars went to the South and the Northeast. The Midwest received about 21% of grant dollars, and of those 21%, 12% went to organizations here in Ohio. So given the subject area slide that we looked at earlier, it's not surprising that the top recipients are heavily represented by educational organizations. So the top recipient between 2008 and 2010 was Morehouse College. Everyone's always curious to know who the top funders are. In our analysis, looking at 2008 through 2010, the top 3 funders were the Ford Foundation, Open Society Foundations, and California Endowment. So those are the highlights of our grants analysis, but I also encourage you to take a look at the report to learn more about the incredible work that many foundations and nonprofits are doing. In the report, we include profiles of initiatives that the Heinz Endowments has taken on, Mitchell Kapoor Foundation, California Community Foundation, among others, so I encourage you to take a look at those. So now I'm going to shift gears, and I'm going to tell you a bit about bmafunders.org. bmafunders.org builds on the research report that we published in October, and one of the observations we make in that report is that this work is at a tipping point. And we say that given the high-profile philanthropy of George Soros and Michael Bloomberg, given the new initiatives that have been started by foundations like Robert Wood Johnson and California Community Foundation, among others, and given the tremendous interest we've seen in gatherings like this that are happening throughout the country. So bmafunders.org is an attempt to take advantage of this moment and pulls together data and information in an online interactive format for funders, nonprofits, policymakers, and really anybody interested in Black male achievement. Our tagline for the site is strengthening the field of Black male achievement, and we aim to do this with 3 main goals in mind. First, we hope the site lifts up the critical role philanthropy can play in supporting Black male achievement, and ultimately we hope the site can help foster greater engagement from funders that are already working in this field, as well as those that may currently be on the sidelines. Second, we hope that the site catalyzes coordination and collaboration among funders and their nonprofit partners so that grant dollars can be leveraged as effectively as possible. And finally, we hope the site can help promote strategic decision-making by making research, information on best practices, and tools for measuring outcomes more easily accessible. So with that context, I'm going to walk you through the site. So on the homepage, you'll find blogs, announcements, and new reports related to Black male achievement that we've aggregated from across the web. This is constantly updated, and you'll notice there's some tags on each of the modules. When you click on the tag, you'll actually get the fully archived list of content. So for example, if you click on a blog, you'll get the full list of blogs that we've found on the web related to Black men and boys. So we hope the homepage content gives users easy access to current information and helps keep folks informed of the latest work happening in the field. On our Why BMA page, you'll find a host of data points on education, employment, family, health, and justice that underscore why this issue is important. These data points are laid out in infographic style to hopefully make the data intuitive and interesting for our site visitors. So the heart of the site is an interactive funding map, which is powered by the Foundation Center database. One of the things we always hear from funders is that they don't always know what their peers are doing. So to address this, we've mapped more than 1,500 grants awarded in the last 5 years so that funders have that information at their fingertips. And hopefully that information can help minimize duplication of effort, help identify funding gaps, and help find potential collaborators. So the default view you see here shows grants explicitly designated for Black men and boys and gives you an at-a-glance view of where the grants are being made. If you want to know what's going on in your region, you can hover over a bubble and get a quick summary of the grants that are being made. And then if you click on this button that says See Grant Details, you'll actually get the full list of grants made in that region. And then you can actually drill down further. You can click on an actual grant and get even more detailed information, including the purpose of the grant. So if you're interested in a particular issue area, you can go up here and select education, for example, and you'll see the funding map change accordingly. If the issue area you're interested in doesn't appear on this list, you can go to the search box over here on the right and type in the keyword and see what pops up. There may be grants that are in your area of interest. If you're interested in not just grants benefiting Black males, but also grants benefiting boys and men of color, you can click on this additional box. And if you give it a minute, you'll see the map change as well. The last thing I'll point out is that the different shades of green you see on the map actually mean something. These are the demographic overlays. So by default, it shows the percent of the total population comprised of Black males. But you can go over here and choose additional overlays related to population, income, and educational attainment. These demographic overlays will give you a sense of the context in any given state, and these data actually come from the census, so you can drill down all the way down to the county level with these data. So let me take you to our In the Field page. On this page, you'll find a timeline. We know that to move this work forward, we need to know what came before us, so we have a history of key milestones in the field. This portion is interactive, so you'll see a button down here that says Submit New Timeline Entry. Anybody can submit a milestone to us that we can then include on the website. On this page, we also have profiles of public-private partnerships and case studies. Again, these are interactive, and we invite users to submit content to us. So finally, we know that grant makers and nonprofits need easy access to research to ensure their work builds on best practices and lessons learned. On our resources page, you'll find our Knowledge Center, which has a collection of more than 50 reports that have been published over the years by foundations, nonprofits, and academics. We've summarized each report, including 5 to 7 key findings. So you can look at those to get a quick sense of what the report is about. If you're in the Twitterverse, you can actually tweet out the key findings. And if you're interested in reading the full text, we have a link to the full text of the report directly on our site. So going back to the resources page at the bottom, we also have an outcomes toolkit where we've pulled together various tools and measures that have been used to assess the progress and impact of programs serving Black men and boys. Again, we're trying to give folks easy access to tools that can improve the quality of their work. And finally here, if you click on BMA websites, we've compiled a list of 60 or so websites of key foundations, nonprofits, think tanks, and other organizations engaged in this work. So that's a very quick tour of the site. I want to leave you with a few different ways that you can get involved. If you're a funder and you go to the funding map and you see that your grants aren't there or they're not accurately represented, come talk to us and we'll work with you to make sure that your grants get included in our database. Whether you're a funder or a nonprofit, if you're involved with an innovative effort for Black male achievement, tell us about it and we'll create a case study and feature your work on our website. As I showed you during the site tour, many portions of the site are interactive, so if you have a milestone for the timeline, if you have a case study, really any other content that you think would be useful to the field, share it with us and we'll get it on the website. You can sign up for email updates. We send out email updates once every 2 weeks to let folks know what the new content on our website is. And again, we're on Twitter, so you can follow us at BMA Funders. This site is brand new. It's literally 2 months old. And we know that this issue is an important one, and we are absolutely committed to making bmafunders.org as useful of a resource to the field as possible. So please let us know what you think. If you have any ideas for how we can develop and enhance the site, get in touch with us. You can reach us at bmafunders@foundationcenter.org. So thank you for your time and attention.